I'm Andrea Saenz, Chief Operating Officer for the Chicago Community Trust.
I'm Ben Harris. I'm the Executive Director of the Kellogg Public-Private Interface at Northwestern University.
My name is Bob Wislow, and I am Chairman and CEO of Parkside Realty.
My name is Erica Mendez. I am a Senior Policy Analyst with the Latino Policy Forum.
My name is Malcolm Crawford, and I'm the Director of Austin's African American Business Networking Association.
My name is Mark Tebbe, and I'm an adjunct professor of entrepreneurship at the Booth School of Business at the University of Chicago.
I'm Bob Clark. I'm the executive chairman of CLACO.
My name is Robin Fickey. I'm the research director at World Business Chicago.
I'm Melody Hobson. I'm president and co-CEO of Ariel Investments.
My name is Alexa James. I'm the executive director of NAMI Chicago.
I'm Sandra Cordova-Misek, President and CEO of public television station WTTW and classical radio station WFMT.
One particularly meaningful aspect of this work was the ability to help illustrate the various voices and perspectives of Chicago's residents using data.
What was eye-opening for me on this committee was how instrumental it is for business leaders, including myself, to come together at this time so we can understand, adjust, and meet the essential expectations that are needed right now.
This is a challenging time, I think, for everyone, but certain zip codes and certain places and certain neighborhoods were hit much harder than others.
We need to engage with these existing organizations in these neighborhoods that know what the needs are, hear them, hear their feedback, and really help participate in making their actions happen in real life.
We talked about the fact that there are a variety of important support services that contribute to the mental and emotional well-being of individuals and communities.
And I enjoyed being pushed along to come to some agreement about a path forward for the mayor and her team to pursue in consultation with communities across the city.
One thing I'm hopeful for is that this will be a time for entrepreneurs who can have the access and capital to go ahead and start new businesses.
I look forward to seeing the recommendations in the final form and really excited to see what levers are going to be used to move some of these ideas into implementation.
The new kind of support needed from our city and its business community to use this once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to rebuild our economy, our businesses, and our job base in the right way.
We are confronting our problems and finding ways to fix them for the benefit of all Chicagoans, for our children, and for our children's children.
I'm so impressed with the cooperation between the city and the business community and nonprofit community. That's the way that we're going to get forward in Chicago.
And what do we have to do together from a scope perspective, from capacity building, to really make sure that our city feels safe enough to engage in the healing practice?
I think the unions are receptive. I think Cisco and other organizations are poised to help with those programs. And with some of the ideas that came out of the Economic Recovery Committee, I think we can get action now.
I was impressed with the aspirations of this work, and I'm extremely optimistic we can be successful.
I can't wait to see the new Chicago.
In these challenging times, to know that so many care about Chicago leads me to believe that the best is yet to come.
And ultimately, I hope, will enable us to attract lots of different types of businesses and industries to our city.
Good morning, everyone. Oh, come on, you can do a little better than that. Good morning, everyone. It is truly an honor and inspiring to be here with you this morning. We are in one of the great iconic places in the city of Chicago on a beautiful day, and really to talk about the end of one chapter, but really the start of an important, big new one. And I'm excited about that. Let me acknowledge the many aldermen and elected officials joining us today. Let me also give a big thanks to our Recovery Task Force co-chair, my friend and mentor, Sam Skinner, for his incredible leadership and dedication over these past 10 weeks. Let's also thank our 16 committee co-chairs, as well as the more than 150 Recovery Task Force members and contributors who devoted their time, energy, and expertise to putting our great city on a path forward from this unprecedented, multifaceted crisis. You just saw in the video a number of people talking about what this moment and what this opportunity means. And to paraphrase what Bob Wislow said, this is a once-in-a-generation opportunity for us. This is our great Chicago moment to really re-envision our city and our region in a way that moves us forward. It was just 10 weeks ago that we began our journey together at the foot of Chicago's water tower, a symbol representing our city's boundless ingenuity, artistry, and resilience. It's a landmark in the truest sense of the word because it was from there, following the Great Chicago Fire, that our fellow Chicagoans embarked on a new beginning of recovery, rebuilding, and growth that made us the magnificent global city today. Just as we began our journey 10 weeks ago at the Chicago Water Tower, we are continuing this journey now in this other architectural treasure, the South Shore Cultural Center, a building which began as a totally exclusive institution to one whose doors are now open to our entire city, representing our collective ability to be more open and more welcoming and be better than we have been before. It's that ability that brings us here today. As we all know, COVID-19 has been a crisis unlike anything we've ever experienced, shocking us in ways that even past recessions, deep depressions, 2 world wars never did. That's because COVID-19 is not a single crisis, but at least 2. One related to our public health and the other related to our economic strength, both reinforcing but also catalyzing each other, and both connected to the structural core of the city and the region we all call home. While our strengths over these past few months have shown through in ways large and small, our vulnerabilities, born of generational inequality and systemic racism, have also flashed like a neon sign, and flashed even brighter following the murder of George Floyd. As Pastor Otis Moss of Chicago's Trinity United Church of Christ said, our fight isn't just about COVID-19, it's about COVID-16-19. Part of what makes our effort unique is that we knew from the start that we had to think and act for both the short term and the long term, and to do so holistically, not just focusing on the economic impacts of this crisis, while those are important and we have to make sure that we reckon with those, but also going beyond that and recognizing the social and mental health impacts as well. We can't move forward unless we think holistically about how we heal our region, from top to bottom, every neighborhood, and all the impacts that were there before and are exacerbated through COVID-19. While the COVID-19 crisis has impacted all of us, it's our fellow Chicagoans who were already struggling beforehand who felt its impact the most profoundly, and whose future was placed in even more uncertain circumstances. As True Chicago reported, by April 20th, we already lost nearly $900 million in economic impact from canceled events alone. Meanwhile, a third of the jobs in Chicago's region are at risk, particularly those in hospitality and food service, as well as retail, administration, and manufacturing. And through it all, it's been our low-income workers feeling the biggest squeeze, with nearly 75% of those workers at risk to losing their job if they hadn't already. Nonetheless, thanks to our disciplined, data-driven, collaborative response to fighting COVID-19 spread, Chicago is currently averaging under 200 new cases per day. And why that's significant is because it takes us out of the high-risk category into the moderate risk category. Now, we're not doing a victory lap. We can't until this virus is put into the recesses of history. But the dedication and commitment from everyone, our public health department, our healthcare workers, our first responders, and ordinary Chicagoans in following the healthcare guidance and making sure that we do everything that we can to keep each other safe, that is what's made the difference, and that is what will carry us through. As an aside, I'll tell you this. I've had a lot of conversations recently with corporate CEOs, but also other people who are looking for places in the country that they can bring events to and feel safe. The very first question that I get asked is, what do your numbers look like? They're not talking about our taxes. They're not talking about our unemployment rate. They're talking about our public health numbers. And we have a good story to tell, and I'm committed to making sure that we continue to be able to tell that story and taking no risk, no chances with anyone's public health, no matter what the circumstances. So our 200 cases, that's roughly 7 times less than our average during the peak. And that's all happening because we continue to safely and cautiously reopen our city with the partnership of many of the people who are on the task force. Our success in containing this disease is even more pronounced when you see what's happening in other parts of the country. As a result, today in Chicago's consumer spending is coming back faster than our peer cities, and we're seeing smaller declines in business revenue. Meanwhile, unemployment in Illinois has been smaller than in New York or California on a per capita basis. And looking at our rebound, we've seen some of our underlying advantages and assets, many of which you already knew. That includes our infrastructure, our workforce, and the fact that we are the most economically diverse city in the nation. As I said back in April at the start of our journey, we don't know when this crisis will end. This virus, unfortunately, has been unpredictable from the start. But what we do know is that when it comes to recovering from this crisis, there are no shortcuts or half measures. Coming out of this crisis in the way that we want and the way that we need requires continued, bold, visionary action that will build on the measures that we have already taken. In short, it would require nothing less than the most breathtaking recovery effort our city has ever seen. And I'm happy to report that's exactly what we have outlined in this report, which is driven by 3 key principles. First, ending economic hardship and enabling economic security and mobility. Second, addressing racial inequities. And third, building together. The men and women we brought together for this recovery task force are as diverse and dynamic as Chicago itself. In all, over these past 10 weeks, the Chicago Recovery Task Force has encompassed individuals from over 100 different organizations, drawn across industries, community groups, academia, labor, and policy to give full voice to every facet of our city and to help guide our path forward. This is what we mean by together. My friends, this is what a recovery task force should look like. And after 30 task force and committee meetings, nearly 110 interviews, and over 55,000 community responses at a 200-person strong youth summit, and untold hours of sweat and sacrifice, we have developed, meaning you have developed, 17 recommendations across 5 priority areas. As I've said time and again, for all of its challenges, this crisis truly does afford us a once-in-a-generation opportunity to really rethink and remake the landscape of Chicago and Chicagoland. The opportunity to make us better, stronger, and more powerful than ever before. The opportunity for us to create a new economic model based on dynamic, inclusive growth that truly uplifts our neighborhoods and finally unlocks the potential that all of us have right here at home. Our first priority area will be to address traumas, both old and new, by creating the most advanced, healing-centered region in the country. That's critically important. Increasing access to mental and emotional health, resources and services in communities, and creating a culturally sensitive, diverse mental health workforce. Our second priority area will be to expand economic opportunity. quality employment. And let me emphasize that again, quality employment, where people can build a life and a future. And financial security by reimagining our region's workforce infrastructure. We need to create good paying jobs, jobs that people can build a future on, jobs where they can dream and not worry about suffering and living from paycheck to paycheck. That's what we are talking about. And to create a plan to invest in displaced young workers. We need to make sure that Black and brown young men recognize that their life's journey doesn't have to end at a corner, that it can and must end at college or career. That's critically important for us to really build a healthy, vibrant community that deals everybody in to the prosperity of this great city. We'll also be increasing ownership and employment for Black and brown residents in the region's contracting and construction industry. And let me just say this, there's a lot that's been done, and I know that our unions and our trades are committed. But my friends, now is the time where you must step up. Talk is not enough. Actions, concrete, measurable, transparent actions to create entryways and economic progress for Black and brown members in the trades is going to be critically important for our region and our city to be able to move forward. And I'm committed to making that happen, and I hope to have partnership from the unions in this effort. We'll be creating the most vibrant small and medium-sized businesses and Black and brown and women-owned businesses in America. And we will expand relief programs and pilot innovative approaches to improve and strengthen the social safety net. Our third key priority area will be to build on our region's strengths. That means expanding Chicago's region's transportation, distribution, logistics sector. And this is an area where regional partnership is going to be critically important. If you look across this region, we've got a tremendous number of assets. But we don't talk to each other. We don't work together. We have to make sure that this is a top priority for regional growth and development. We need to also strengthen Chicago's healthcare and life sciences ecosystem and building on the region's assets in food and agriculture. And fourth, we will capture the opportunities, yes, the opportunities created by COVID-19. And we'll do it by building on our region's historic strength in manufacturing, prepare the region to capture headquarters and corporate development and specialty centers. And we will lead by capturing film and TV production opportunities, given the lack of studio space in California. We welcome the film and TV production to Chicago. Our fifth area will be to reignite activity through Chicago by sharing our story and the introduction of Chicago's master brand. One of the areas that we need to step up is making sure that we tell our story to ourselves so that our people know our great strengths and the things that unify us, and telling our story to a national audience. We will do that, and we will do it better than ever before. And we'll also be leading in the reimagination of regional tourism, travel, and hospitality. And I'm mindful of the fact that we have three leaders right here. Loretta Clark from MPA, Andrea Zopp of World Business Chicago, and David Whitaker of Choose Chicago. They will help us lead this effort going forward and showing the world that Chicago is truly open for business. This, by the way, would not have been possible without the partnerships of industry and community organizations, many of whom are doing this work already. Each of these measures will build and accelerate the investments we've already made to address structural inequities in our communities that have struggled for generations. We are doubling down on our efforts through Invest Southwest, our Solutions Toward Ending Poverty initiative, or STEP, which seeks to end generational poverty in Chicago. And Chicago Connected, our groundbreaking $50 million program we just announced 2 weeks ago, which will provide free, high-speed internet service to the homes of approximately 100,000 CPS students. This is not only one of the largest efforts of its kind in the country, but with a horizon of 4 years, it will also be one of the longest. If our kids aren't connected to the internet and to broadband, they can't learn. If our kids are not connected to broadband in the internet, they can't dream the way that they should. They can't find the future that awaits them. And this initiative will make sure that we eliminate the digital divide once and for all. There's no denying that we still have a long way to go with COVID-19, and there will continue to be difficult days ahead. But I'm not worried about that now because I've experienced who we are as a city, and I've seen who we can be. Thanks to your work, we are now able to double down on our mission of building a new Chicago that will not only serve as a model of how cities can not only recover from the COVID-19 crisis, but use recovery as a driver for growth that leverages their advantages and reimagines who we are. We need to strike now while this opportunity exists. These moments of recovery and reimagination don't come often along. We have a sense of urgency and a sense of mission that we need to take advantage of and leverage to our benefit. We need the partnership of our corporate friends and neighbors in this efforts. And for those that are serious about helping to solve structural inequities in our city, call us. We need your help, and there's opportunity there as well. We are ready to partner with you. I want to personally thank all of you from the bottom of my heart for this incredible effort. And I would be remiss if I also didn't thank my own team that has been working tirelessly on this effort. Deputy Mayor Samir Mayakar, Katie Leone, his deputy, and so many others that have contributed to this effort. This truly has been one of the most collaborative, I think, and special moments in our city's recent history, where we have all come together, making sure that we are listening and that we're building on each other's strengths, but also being clear-eyed about the challenges that lie ahead of us. If we do this right, and I'm committed to making sure that we do, this will be this kind of transformation that generations from now will be talking about as the second Chicago Renaissance. This is our moment, this is our opportunity to really rise to the occasion, and I'm excited about the work ahead. This report, your work, will not be relegated to a shelf. We are going to make it live. We are going to be true to the work and the challenges that you have put forward for us, and I'm excited about leading this opportunity and reporting back to you on a regular basis about what we've been doing. So thank you very much, and I invite you to join me in welcoming Committee Co-Chair Roberto Herencia of Byline Bank, who's been a great partner for us. Roberto, please come to the podium. Thank you very much.
Good morning, and thank you, Mayor, for those incredible words. And I am Roberto Herencia. I'm the chairman of the board of Byline Bank. Chicago is home to my professional career and personal life since I moved here in September of 1991, and I am lucky and fortunate to still call Chicago home. I participated as a co-chair of the Policy and Economic Stimulus Committee, grateful for the opportunity to be part of the critical effort to reimagine what is possible in Chicago today. This is my first time working directly with the mayor, and I have to tell you that I am very impressed with the mayor's leadership and aplomb during this challenging journey, not only dealing with the virus, but also with the tragic death of George Floyd. During this period, she has always guided us and told us about the need to pay attention to the inequities that exist and that are still here with us today, now exacerbated by these two events. Her balance between tough and compassionate leadership makes us all proud. I am equally impressed by her staff, and I have to tell you that it is all about people, right? It starts with people. In my business, you have to engage your people so that they can delight your customers, so that they can invest and partner in communities, And if you do all of that well, then you deliver value to your stakeholders, whether they are shareholders, whether it's a community, or your own employees. Her team put up a really good process to listen, learn, and recommend. They did an outstanding job in making us feel participants and part of the effort, and turn around ideas and conversations into a handful of key and actionable initiatives, as you will see in the advisory report. The overarching enabler to these initiatives presented by the Recovery Task Force is the city's resolve, as the mayor was talking about, to facilitate ease of doing business, specifically, in my view, with small businesses. And small businesses are dear and near to me, given that I am a banker. The initiative to create the most vibrant SMB and Black and Brown owned business community in America is a natural for Chicago. It's key to building a resilient economic recovery over the next few years. The report being presented today, this advisory report, is truly one of a kind. It is not only a disaster recovery plan, it is full of practical and doable initiatives. It is truly what I call the product of vision engagement and shared agreements. Above all, it is a call to action. It is a call to action by the private sector to team up with the public sector and do what is right for our city. With that, I will now leave you with a short video on one of our initiatives.
The recommendation is to capture film and production opportunities for the city of Chicago, given the lack of production space in California. I think it's most relevant for the city of Chicago today because it takes opportunities for our city into neighborhoods where we have large warehouses or other big spaces that can be used as production facilities. And it has a follow-on effect in terms of other industries, from catering to drivers, all sorts of security, all sorts of other industries can thrive as a result of more production in Chicago. I hope the outcome will be that Chicago can become a hub for the film and television industry and become an outpost that perhaps people hadn't thought of before, that ultimately creates a whole new industry for our city.
Good morning. My name is Karen Freeman Wilson, and I am honored to bring you greetings from the Chicago Urban League. I'm pleased to join you today, and it has also been an honor to serve on this recovery task force. I want to thank Mayor Lightfoot, Mr. Skinner, Melody Hobson, and all of the co-chairs for their tremendous leadership and for the opportunity to work with one, and I say one, the mayor probably knows this, of the hardest working teams in municipal government. I also appreciate the dedication of my co-chairs, Alexia James and Evelyn Diaz, as we led our mental health and Wellness Committee, and all of the members of the entire task force. The vision, insight, and heartfelt discussions that we have shared give me hope that our work will play a pivotal role in the transformation of our city. It has been a special privilege to watch and have a close vision, Mayor, as you have led from the proverbial space of between a rock and a hard place. We have all experienced trauma at the hands of COVID-19. The degree of our experience has been dependent on whether one of us or a member of our family was struck by the disease, or worse, died from it, or whether we lost employment, our business, our housing, or experienced some type of food insecurity. As the pandemic was chronicled in March, it became increasingly clear that the inequalities of access to health care, education, employment, and housing would all play a role in the devastation from this disease. But it was the murder of George Floyd that shined a spotlight on something that many of us already knew, and a fact that was laid bare in detail in the League's most recent report, COVID-19, an epidemic of inequities. And that fact was that institutional racism made Black and brown people at a greater risk of suffering more from COVID-19 before the disease even had a name. And so as our work evolved as a task force, we saw an opportunity to not only create a recovery plan, but a long-lasting transformation plan that would make access to culturally competent mental health services a way of life, and a plan that recognizes that wellness is inextricably linked to health, my ability to provide for my family, and my sense of safety and security. Now, there are some of us who take these aspects of life for granted, but there are far too many of us in Black and brown communities and in communities throughout this city that find these basic tenets of life elusive. On June 19th, we celebrated freedom from the last slaves who were held captive after the Emancipation Proclamation. Last week, we celebrated Independence Day. Both days are reflective of symbolic speeches that count on individuals to bring those words from the paper into action. That is not something that the mayor, the governor, alderman, or any other elected official can do alone. That is not something that lies at the feet of community-based organizations like the Urban League or Grow Greater Inglewood. It's not something that we can depend solely on our institutions of faith to deliver. It is not even something that corporate America or philanthropy with their resources can deliver. As we work to ensure that every community sees the promise of this report and the speeches that I talked about earlier, it is something that will require all of us to move forward together. That is our challenge, but yes, Mayor, that is also our opportunity. Earlier, I was thinking about how devastating this disease has been for so many of us. And I was also thinking about the difficulty of the time that we have experienced together since the murder of George Floyd. But I also thought about the opportunity that it has created for us as individuals to reflect, to spend time with our families, to try out new recipes, and to do all of those things that we've been able to enjoy since sheltering in place. And that is representative of the opportunity that we have coming out of COVID-19, the pandemic, and the epidemic of institutional racism. And we can only achieve that if we do this and move forward together. Thank you for the opportunity to serve. At this time, you will see a video that represents one of the recommendations of our subcommittee.
One of the recommendations that came out of the Mental Health and Wellness Subcommittee was to create the most advanced healing center region in the country. Now, that may sound really big and grandiose, but the truth is that Chicago has been working towards becoming a trauma-informed city for a very long time. We thought that it was really critically important to change the language to healing. As we know, many communities are living through tremendous amount of trauma and devastation, but have also demonstrated really, really strong resiliency. So here we're talking about a time in our city where there have been so many aspects of our lives that have been disrupted, and so many of us are experiencing grief and loss, but also underlying issues that have been impacting us for many, many years. So how do we create healing in a city? Well, the way that we have talked about it is by looking at all different systems: workforce, school, faith-based organizations, community organizations, and really think about how do we leverage these groups? How do we offer them training? How do we offer them the experience to engage with community in a more meaningful way? And how do we prioritize mental health accessibility so that people feel that it's easy to do? And finally, how do we use this opportunity to really coordinate services? Chicago is a city that is full of amazing providers, amazing faith-based leaders and outreach workers, people doing incredible work. What we need to do is have everyone come together so we can jointly help to heal our city.
Good morning. Good morning. It's Thursday. So, one, I want to thank Mayor Lightfoot for always making space. And I also want to thank Richard Edelman and Sandra Missick, who are also the co-chairs of our subcommittee on marketing and small business development. The committee, and I also want to acknowledge our Alderman Hairston. And I want to just take this time to center us here and where we are today in South Shore. You know, this is my beloved hood. And we are in the People's Palace. And there's a great history here that was fought and paid for as an ongoing example of sweat and tears of when we come together, we win. All of us who now are able to share this exquisite expression of nature, you know, our lakefront, Chicago. And these last several weeks, they have been extraordinary. It's been super extraordinary. What a first year on the job. I mean, for our city, for our country, for the world. A pandemic, an ongoing uprising for justice, and of course the ongoing bloodshed in our streets caused not just by poverty, but by the malice and viciousness of racism. What feels like for many of us in the Black community a slow-moving genocide plaguing most of us, killing us and moving us and driving us out. And that must end. That must end. And for many Black residents at this time, there's a call for reparations and reconciliation, a new deal. And that was the ground at which I was able to bring that voice to this work, to this committee, and as a stand as a debt to my ancestors and to the village that raised me right here at the country club, if you still call it. And it brought that work to the Marketing and Small Business Development Committee. But I also want to share that there was a common ground across the committees, is that we couldn't continue the way that things were. The recommendation that we submitted as a committee was to build and support an infrastructure that would allow for our great neighborhoods, from South Shore to Austin, to not just survive, but to thrive. In fact, thrival, which I have to give a nod to Amanda Williams and Andres Hernandez around thriving. We need our neighborhoods to be in thrival mode. So, the cultural richness that is Chicago's neighborhoods is an asset that we have not thoroughly invested in yet. By leveraging the unique cultural tapestry that can allow for more Chicagoans to just see Chicago, but also those who are visiting our great city to see Chicago, and to soak up the rich vibrancy that is just so shy. It will be a driver to produce more small businesses and jobs, much needed jobs. We all know that the backbone of our economy are through small businesses. So we need jobs and shared ownership. Let Chicago lead the way around cooperative economic models and community wealth building in our neighborhoods. The neighborhood hubs is one of the other suggestions that we have in our recommendations. When we are invested in on par like we do in the loop, we can accelerate the emergence and meet the ideas and innovations that are already here in our neighborhoods. They exist. That is what can grow Chicago, not just post-COVID-19, but for future generations. The vibrancy is already here. Let's keep it, let's nurture it, and share it with the world even louder and bolder than before. Let us model what it looks like for the nation. In closing, I would like to just share from one of our beloved griots and poets, Ms. Gwen Brooks, who used to read poetry actually over in the music room there. A quick quote from one of her most famous poems, which is, "We are each other's harvest. We are each other's business. We are each other's magnitude and bond. We are the future of Chicago. Let's make this happen. Peace." So now you'll see a video for the third presentation, which represents one of the recommendations that we had for the Recovery Task Force. Thank you.
One of our recommendations is to lead the reimagination of tourism, travel, and hospitality by developing new partnerships between Choose Chicago and local tourism agencies, by using that network to build public confidence in travel and transportation, and finally, by creating a health checklist for businesses and attractions throughout the city.
Good morning. I'd like to, first of all, thank the mayor for bringing me in and the opportunity to be part of this task force. I'm Mayor Joseph Tamburino of the Village of Hillside. I'm chairman of the Metropolitan Mayor's Caucus, which is a partnership that exists of 285 mayors and village presidents in the Chicago region, the whole area. I am also honored to serve as co-chair of this regional coordination working group, the regional task force. On behalf of the elected leaders from throughout the Chicago area, I would like to thank Mayor Lightfoot for having the foresight to ensure that the planning process includes the regional government and a regional perspective to that end. My working group was comprised of aldermen from the city of Chicago, suburban mayors, county board chairmen, leaders in the Illinois General Assembly. It was a great cross-section to talk about what we need to do and how we want to see this happen. There was no question among the members of the group that we needed one another if our region is going to survive and thrive in the future and really move forward. What I mean by this is the suburbs need Chicago. We need to have a strong central city. The city, in turn, needs the suburbs to be viable as they can possibly be. There is no question in our view that we can create a better place for our collective residents to live, to work in the city and suburbs and collaborate in the region, as opposed to us working independently and individually. This is a time that we all had to be together. There's no two ways about that. This was the lens for which our regional coordination working group viewed the ideas and initiatives to review over these last several weeks and many, many conversations. We are extremely impressed with the final advisory report, and I congratulate all of you that were part of this and contributed to it, because it's one of the best, if not the best document I've ever seen in my tenure in government. So I thank you all very much for that. Personally, I believe that the advisory report is in fact the Burnham plan of the 21st century, where we're all going, what we need to do, and how we need to work together. It sets a vision for our metropolitan region and provides practical and thoughtful strategies as to how we can collaborate together and carry this vision forward. This is so important to us, very much so. So I thank you, Mayor, for having included us and thinking of us as to be part of this. And to that end, I thank all of you, but I'd like to introduce the next speaker, which is Sam Skinner. Sam is an individual who served with Mayor Lightfoot as the co-chair of the Full Recovery Task Force. He is a person who has served Chicago, the region, the state, and our country with distinction, and someone I've known for many, many years. Sam?
I always said I don't want to follow Mayor Lightfoot as a speaker. I'll be at the end, that's great. Then I've heard everybody else, and I'm saying I wish I'd followed Mayor Lightfoot. This is really a labor of love. I'm not going to tell Mayor Lightfoot she's one of the best I've ever worked with. I'm not going to tell her staff they're one of the best I've ever worked with. I'm not going to tell anybody that the report that they've worked is the best I've ever seen, because I don't want them to get a big head. But if I were going to tell them that, that's what I'd say. I won't say drafted. I was an easy draft. I came to Chicago for my first job out of the University of Illinois and started in June of 1960. Yeah, that's right. I was born in Chicago too, but after graduating from the University of Illinois, I went to the 618 South Michigan Avenue, and that's when I really fell in love with Chicago. And other for time in the military and time in Washington, I've lived here in the area all my life. And when anybody ever asks me where you're from, I proudly say, I don't, by the way, say the second city, I say I'm from Chicago, Illinois. And so when Mayor Lightfoot gave me the opportunity to be part of this, I had no idea what venture I was going to go on. But now, all I can do is say thank you. It's an opportunity of a lifetime for each and every one of us. They don't come along. We talk about of a generation. I'd go deeper than that. I think this is one of the key seminal times in the history of the city of Chicago, is where we go from here. This report gives us a battle plan, and I can guarantee you, having worked with our mayor, she will not let this sit on the shelf. She will not let me sit at the shelf. I got here in a half an hour early to make sure I was on time, because I know what would happen if I wasn't. She and I are committed, along with her staff, to implement this great program and make it back. The other observation I'd make, and two other observations. One is I'm driving down this beautiful day. I go by the Museum of Science and Industry, which is, to be honest with you, my most favorite building in Chicago. Not because there's not a lot of great buildings and a lot of great organizations, but I think about when they built that building and what Chicago did to make that happen. It's an incredible demonstration of what can happen in Chicago every day, every year, every century. And that gave me great belief that we can also come back from this stronger. I look at this as an opportunity because times are changing. This is giving us an opportunity to figure out how they're changing and what we're going to do about to be part of the change and to be and become the leading city, the #1 city in the world to come back from this with a plan. And it only happens because of the people that are involved. My mother always used to tell me, she told me a lot of things actually, but one thing she told me, I will just share with you my mother's story because I didn't get to do it on Mother's Day, but my mom, a single parent, and went to the University of Illinois. We'd never been on the campus, and we drove up to campus. She pointed to a dorm room on the 3rd floor and said, "I'll see you on Thanksgiving," took my bag out of the car and drove away. She was sending me a message, get involved. She also taught me another thing. Associate yourself with good people and they will bring you up. And that's what we've done here. We have put together a group, an outstanding group of good people across all sectors, all open to thought, all open to ideas, all open to suggestions, all welcoming the opportunity. Every one of us in this book is honored to be part of this project and part of this effort. And it also opens all of our eyes, and you talked about opening our eyes. A lot of things recently have opened our eyes, but it's really opened my eyes, and Mayor Lightfoot has helped and the staff. We have several challenges as we go forward. Number one, we now know what our challenges are. We now know they're huge. We now know that we've got a battle plan, or I won't say battle plan, but we've got a plan to go forward, and now it's up to us to implement it. And we've got an implement schedule with a lot of people involved. But all of the people, one way or another, that were involved in this, and many, many, many more in Chicago, will be involved in the recovery. Because we can't do it without you. We can't do it without organized labor. We can't do it without the communities. We can't do it without the non-for-profits. We can't do it without the corporations who are here or want to come here. And they all want to stay. The other good thing that gives me, I called someone the other day as part of this and who is involved in cities all over the country putting on displays. And this person mentioned at the end, he said, you know, Chicago is our favorite place to come to. This is where all our conventioneers want to come to for all the reasons that we know. And that said, that's not surprising, but let's get that message out. So we're going to be working forward to put together an implementation team. It'll be headed by, it'll be headed by the mayor. Everything's headed by the mayor. I work for her now. She wasn't born when I was going to college, but now I'm her boss. So times have changed. But I couldn't work for a better boss, and I couldn't work with a better team, and I couldn't work for a better group of people who care. I can't tell you the number of people have called me. What can I do? What is my time? What help? I love Chicago. I want to be part of this. So it has been a wake-up call. It's a wake-up call from all of us who are working together. It doesn't matter where you grew up, where you are now. We're all in this together, and we're proud to be in it together, and we're going to do it. And if we can do the things that we've done over the last 200 years in the city of Chicago, we can make this happen as well. And we are going to be the leading city in the nation, as we are already with this report. We're going to be the leading demonstration city for the world on how to recover, and we're going to do it with your help. So your job has just begun. Thanks to all the team here. My buddy back there who talks to me every day, thank you, Katie and Michael and Samir and all of you, but they've all worked at this together, and my mom was right. Work with good people, they will bring you up, and they've brought me up. Thank you very much.
Now I think I'm happy to take your questions.
All right, thank you. Is this on? Great. Okay. First of all, Mayor,
First of all, tell me who you are.
I'm Kai Martin with NBC5, representing all of my journalistic colleagues out there in the world. Got a lot of questions. A couple of them are on topic, so I'll start with those first.
Okay.
The first thing that a lot of reporters want to know about is how this plan forward relates to CPS school in the fall. It's a huge question for parents, for the teachers, for the facilities. Are you moving forward with in-person school this fall? What's your thought?
Well, we sit here in July, and typically CPS doesn't open up until after Labor Day. So we're, as with everything, we're going to be guided by the public health guidance, and we need to take our time and see where we are in the arc of this virus at that point. But having said that, of course CPS, with a lot of different stakeholders, has been working on a reopening plan and what that will look like. I will let them give the specifics, but we plan to make an announcement relatively soon about what that might look like. But of course we'll have contingency plans if our public health metrics are not where we need them to be in late August.
So perhaps later in July you hope to have that announcement, or do you have a timeline?
I would say soon.
Soon, okay. Another question is, at the very start of your comments, you mentioned the economic impact of some of the cancellations of just the huge events and conventions. Crane Chicago Business wanted to know, was that number only through April, and do you have another number for the rest of the summer, or is that still coming in?
We'll get you an updated number, but that was through the first part of the year. Look, this has been a tremendous blow to our convention and tourism business. But again, I commend Loretta Clark, Andy Zopp, David Whitaker, and Michael Fastnock and others who are really pushing themselves to kind of reimagine what tourism and convention business will look like given the new normal. So I think we've got some creative things in store, but yes, we're not anticipating seeing tens of thousands of people gather like we traditionally have. We're the number one, I think, convention destination in the world. Every convention destination has been hit in the same way. That's why we are trying to reinvent ourselves and offer a combination of in-place and virtual activities for conventioneers to really rethink. Look, the reality is the people who book the conventions are very mindful of the challenges that everyone faces all over the country regarding cases and so forth. So the fact that Chicago continues to make important, steady progress is a selling point for us. So I'm confident in the leadership team and that we will transform ourselves into this new normal to the betterment of the region and certainly our economic standing.
All right, great. Would you permit a couple of off-topic?
Yes, of course.
Okay. First one is Alderman Raymond Lopez's home was vandalized overnight and a neighbor's home, and he feels that he was targeted by possibly gang members. Those are in his words. Mm-hmm. Do you have any thoughts about what happened to your colleague overnight?
I don't know much about it at this point beyond what Alderman Lopez has shared with the press, but I can tell you that CPD immediately responded and are in conversation with him, and an investigation is ongoing.
Okay. Do you believe there should be a national mask requirement?
Look, I think it's foolish for anybody to walk outside their house without a mask. I've been very clear about that. We've been very clear about that. It doesn't help when you see national leaders who don't understand the importance of the moment, but I'm happy to see even finally some of the federal leaders recognizing the importance of having a face covering when you walk outside. It is one of the few proven ways that we can reduce the risk, and I want to be clear about this. The risk exists. When you walk outside of your house, when you're outside of your family cohort, the risk exists. There are certain circumstances where that risk goes up, but one way that you can minimize it is wear a face covering, practice social distancing, and make sure you're regularly engaging in the hand hygiene guidance that both our local public health department and the CDC have given from the very beginning. Do I think that we should be arresting and ticketing people who don't wear masks. I don't think that that's a good use of scarce resources, but do I think that we need to continue to push people and educate them into compliance? 100% we do, and that particularly applies to, I will say, the 18 to 29-year-old cohort. We need to make sure that young people understand they are not invincible when it comes to COVID-19. This virus doesn't discriminate. It attacks everyone. And unfortunately, we're starting to see, even here in Chicago, a slight uptick in the amount of cases involving that 18 to 29-year-old cohort. They're not wearing face coverings at the rate that they should. I'd like to see it be 100%, but we need to keep talking to that group and say, even if you don't have regard for your own health, and you should, the reality is when you're out in congregate settings, whether it's at work, whether it's at a bar or a restaurant or some other form of entertainment or exercise, you are increasing your risk, and then you're bringing that back to your household. If you've got anybody in your household, a mom, a dad, a grandma, even a sibling that's got some kind of underlying medical condition, if you don't wear a face covering, you are increasing the risk for them.
So it sounds like you're saying it should be a personal responsibility, not something you need to legislate.
Well, it can only be a personal responsibility. We have for weeks now, maybe months, mandated that when you go out in public and when you're in a situation where you can't social distance, you must wear a face covering. But at the end of the day, unless we're willing to arrest everyone who's out there, which of course we're not, we're in a democracy, all of this depends upon individual choices and responsibility. This virus has emphasized to us how interconnected we are. The choice that you make, the choice that I make, the choice that other people make has a phenomenal impact on everybody else that they come into contact with. That's why being smart, wearing face coverings, social distancing, and hand hygiene is critically important. And, of course, staying home when you are sick.
The Supreme Court ruled today that President Trump must release his tax returns in New York City. Any thoughts?
It's about time. Look, that's the price you pay for public service. I've released all my tax returns. I will continue to do so. And really, every president, Republican or Democrat, understands that that level of transparency is critically important. We are a country that depends upon the legitimacy of government. And legitimacy of government at all levels is being called into question, and it has been for a number of years. No one can place themselves above the people. We all serve our constituents. And in this place, the president serves every single resident in our country. He's got to be much more transparent. I think that's critically important. Given the amount of business entanglements that he's had, the challenges, the concerns, this is the right decision, and I hope that it won't take a court case that goes all the way to the Supreme Court for anybody else who aspires to any public office, but certainly the presidency, to recognize this is how we do things in America.
Just two more? Okay, so one more off topic, then we'll bring it back. The last off topic question is from a reporter from Block Club Chicago. She wants to know your thoughts about the first local school council deciding to take a CPD officer off their campus. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I've said all along, the local school councils, who are typically made up of parents and other stakeholders who really understand the conditions in the schools, that's where the decision should lie. And people are exercising that right. What we need to do is make sure that we continue to empower local school councils to make those decisions, and I hope they will make the decisions based on upon the best information that they have. And every local school council is going to make different decisions, but that's what democracy is about. They are elected. We have empowered them to really be responsible for local school environment. They should make those decisions. So I applaud them for exercising that right.
And finally, just a final question. A lot of reporters ask this regarding all these recommendations from the task force. It's very ambitious. some of these things could be rather expensive. Are we still getting into the how do we pay for it stage, and where's the money going to come from?
I was going to answer the question for you before you, or ask the question for you before you answered. There's always a question about how do we pay for it, but we look at it this way. When you look at the choices that we make on investments, there are resources that are available. What I think this task force has made us focus on is how do we prioritize our investments? How do we prioritize our expenditures? And as Sam said, we're in a moment in our civic life where lots of people are stepping up and saying, Mayor, how can I help? This has got to be a public-private partnership, but we believe, particularly in tough economic times, that the government at all levels should act as a stimulus. We have no choice but to make these investments. If we want to grow our economy, if we want to create a ready, willing, and able workforce, and if we want to create an environment where people feel like their economic stake and their livelihoods can be in Chicago. If we neglect them in this moment, if we don't take advantage of the opportunities that this moment, I think, presents to us and is reflected in the task force report, our city and our region will be the poorer for it. We cannot afford not to make these kinds of targeted strategic investments in partnership with the entire ecosystem of our city and our region. That's why I'm so excited about really the blueprint and the roadmap that this gives us. From the time of my announcing my campaign, and certainly my year plus in office, although at times it seems like multiple years, the one thing that I have emphasized and the one thing that I believe is in equity and inclusion. You've seen from the task force report, but you've also seen it in the stories of Chicagoans, that there is a great hunger and need for investment. There's a great hunger and need for healing. And I think what this task force report does is very well melds those two aspects to make sure that we are building healthy and vibrant communities that really can support the kind of economic growth and unleash the potential that has been, I think, suppressed for way too long because we focus almost exclusively on the downtown to the exclusion of the neighborhoods. There's a lot of great things about this task force report, the physical report itself, but one of the greatest things, I think, is the front page, the cover art. That is a perspective looking from the neighborhoods downtown. And what that tells us and what that tells me is if we build the strength in our neighborhoods, we will continue to see a thriving downtown, of course, but we will be unlocking the potential that Anton and others, I think, eloquently talked about. This is a great city of great people, and things are happening everywhere, not just in the central business district. And our task and our obligation, but also our opportunity, is to make sure that we are much more conscious, much more intentional about how we make those investments and uplift the story of Chicagoans and our regional partners. If we do this right, people are going to be coming to Chicago to say, what happened? How did the Chicago Renaissance start? And that's the story that we want to tell.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, everyone.